Kwe. This is Stephen Nojiri. And as most of you know, I'm working on the Kusunoki tradition. And what I wanted to share with you in this audio piece is a rough draft of the translation to the introductory piece, basically the introduction to the warfare teachings. Now, this comes from the first wave teachings. This text is allegedly written by Masashige, but it still possibly could be one of his sons or even one of his grandsons, because the first wave technically covers Masashige himself to his grandsons. But tradition holds this is Masashige's work. And again, this is a rough draft translation, so I feel pretty good about it, but at the same time, in the future, it, this may change, but this is, for the most part, this is roughly close to what the final draft will be. So I'm just going to read it, and I will, as I read it, if something is, if I feel to make commentary, I'll break and make commentary. Okay. As for the way to study warfare, the superior method is to have the intention in your heart of great, deep affection and care for all the various people of all types throughout the world. Secondly, or the middle, one studies and becomes skilled in deceptive tactics. Lastly, or the lowest quality, one greedily studies standard warfare tactics and techniques. So that's the opening paragraph. For this reason, in ancient times, military leaders would start with themselves to make themselves smart enough to lead 10,000 people, brave enough to lead 1,000 warriors into battle. Therefore, have a deep affection for the common people and the soldiers and the officers. Keep harmony among your warriors to keep them bonded together for the common cause. Remember that conspiracy is the way of the gods, and take all of your warfare tactics to their wondrous extent. Another way to translate that last line is develop all of your warfare tactics until they become esoteric and magical. Because basically it says here that you take all your warfare tactics and develop them their to their level, and the Japanese word is myo, which can mean wondrous, magical. It can even mean like strange in terms of like paranormal, like weird, strange, amazing. It has different meanings, but in this text, it means magical, um, to the level of spiritual. So when it says, so I'll read it again. Therefore, I have a deep, and I'll use the second translation that I have written here. Therefore, I have a deep affection for the common folk and the soldiers and officers. Keep harmony among your warriors to keep them bonded together for the common cause. Remember that conspiracy is the way of the gods, and develop all of your war tactics until they become esoteric and magical. The three traits of a true general, and true general here, the way it's written means like an authentic, like somebody who really embodies the ideal of correct ideal of general. So true general. Three traits. Since ancient times, sages have said that the general's three traits are wisdom, compassion, and bravery. It is said that when discussing these virtues, one should not try to compare themselves to heaven and to the sages. Give compassion to ordinary people like you and me as best as you can. Always try to keep a perception of compassion for all beings in your heart. And as for wisdom, correct wisdom can be as simple as avoiding negative actions and guarding your behavior from degeneration. Ancient writings of these three virtues, in regard to past sages and holy men, are very lofty and very perfected. However, ordinary people like you and I cannot reach these levels, and we shouldn't try to compare ourselves to these levels. Comparing ourselves to former times is actually pointless and without any substantial meaning. If you feel compelled to compare yourself to something, compare yourself to your opponent when engaged in hostilities. Examine your enemy, then examine yourself. Examine your own virtues. This will lead you to transcend your virtue being limited to just a specific group of people. Interestingly enough, if your own virtue rises above discriminating between groups of people, you will in the future be remembered as a sage of your time. Concerning compassion, a virtuous military leader must always see the enemy troops as his own troops, see the enemy's population as his own population. And a virtuous military commander's wisdom is like this: the enemy's plans and tactics are actually your own plans and tactics. The enemy's gains and profits are actually your gains and profits. A virtuous military commander's bravery is like this: the enemy's dignity is my dignity. The enemy's abilities are my abilities. All of this must be addressed before any mention of castles, terrain, tools, weapons, provisions, food, etc., etc. While using these three virtues, because of clearly perceiving everything in the world through these three virtues, you will take hold of the opponent's plot and overturn it. This is known as the method of a superior military commander. Middling leaders do not accumulate much virtue in regards to themselves. They seek achievement, they have to seek out the opponent's plots. They have to make complex strategies to deceive the enemy, and many times they merely simply try to kill as many enemies as they can through their tactics and plots. And they struggle to keep the enemy alive. Even if these middling generals have 10 victories, they never actually achieve the great peace. Alas, thus is the method of middling leaders. As for lower military leaders, they like warfare and they like fighting for profit and fighting for gain. They rule the officers and common people through anger. Their people follow the rules due to fear of severe punishment and death. They depend on brute force and fail to perceive the enemy's plots, and they fail to perceive the enemy's ingenuity. They proceed forward when it is not the correct time to proceed forward. They retreat when it is not the correct time to retreat. They never contemplate and create their own tactics, but rather they always just listen to other people. And they are always drawn to rare and fancy armor and equipment. They always covet and crave each victory to come only from dangerous circumstances. That is the method of lower military leaders. The tactics that I teach are a divine method which has at its root the correct heart. Understand that the attacking army's victory or defeat is due to karma. In every battle, both ignorant leaders and good leaders fight to take territory, or they fight to defend territory. But to which one will the officers and the common folk be obedient to? They follow the leader which they believe holds them in compassion, that cares for them. Absolutely, they will never follow and be obedient to the ignorant leader, especially if they don't believe that the ignorant leader cares for them. Therefore, when studying military tactics, if you perceive the lower, then you should study and achieve the middle. And if you perceive the middle, then you should study and achieve the high. You should always work to study and achieve the higher level. Thus, sage rulers of the past had no intention of fame, no intention for profit. However, their virtue would amass as they stuck to their moral codes, forgave the crimes of deceased persons, brought relief to distressed people, liberated people from their suffering, and rescued people from emergency situations. And for this reason, each and every man and woman respected and followed them, and they were able to unite and sustain all under heaven. And then it goes on to list a series of Chinese dynasties. And it says that these dynasties lasted so long because they understood these principles. And it comes back. In short, all under heaven, all under heaven is not something you seek for yourself. And I want to repeat that again. All under heaven is not something you seek for yourself. When it comes to the time of battle, all that matters is which of the two leaders has more virtue, which of the officers are greater skilled, which of the two has more dignity. Ultimately, which one has the support of the people. Society will always follow the high level leader, the superior leader. Even people 1,000 miles away will be obedient to the superior, to the high level leader. It is for this reason that as time passes, such leaders will be known as a great lord of the whole world, which can also be read the great leader under heaven. So, great leader under heaven can also be translated as great leader or great master, great lord of the whole world. But the direct translation would be great leader under heaven. So, such a leader that even people from 1,000 miles away are obedient to such a leader, that is a great leader under heaven. Taiko, author of the Six Secret Teachings, says, all under heaven does not refer to just a single person or a single group. All under heaven means everyone under heaven. So the way that the kanji works in this quote is all under heaven means every single person. So the implication here is everybody on your side and everybody on the enemy side. So when the teachings say that you're responsible for all under heaven, it really means your people and your enemy's people. This is a very important quote here. Thus, in this military tactics that I teach, one must throw away your desire, and you must not abuse all of those under heaven. So many love profit and gain, but loving profit and gain is ordinary and mediocre. It's easy to understand these simple things. When you give to people, they become greedy. When you steal, they scatter. When there's love, they become intimate. When they hate, they avoid. When searching for people, how is that you can't say that you can find them? If the country's people are ruled peacefully, then what reason would there be for any kind of sorrow or anger when it comes time for the families to produce soldiers and warriors? Therefore, my military teachings teaches a correct heart, order in one's own life, governance of a country, bringing peace and harmony to all under heaven, that it is one's duty to follow great morality. Then, after that, I teach how to attack and strike at outlaws and enemy soldiers through clever plots and war techniques that have been developed to their wondrous extent. This path is not difficult to follow. This path is not difficult to learn. I don't teach using old and outdated things. I use metaphors, I use examples. I teach this from one human being to another, heart to heart. Everything is in accordance with the current customs, present heaven, which means present time, present country, present affairs, present soldiers, present common folk, present enemies. It is immediately applicable and can bring you peace of mind. The structure is immediately applicable. These war strategies can be applied immediately in war and provide victory. In this present world, many wicked people spread their gunpo, teach matters regarding warfare, teach that mastery equates to massive slaughter of the enemy. There is no benefit in these methods. In most cases, those who like to win crave profit and they crave gain. Even people, when people always crave profit and crave gains, they will never become close to each other. And if the people do not become close to each other and familiarize themselves by getting close, the camps will never harmonize. And if the camp never harmonizes, the battle formations will certainly be disrupted. Therefore, my war technique first teaches to clearly know your own heart before perceiving the enemy's feelings, correct one's own country, and then examine the enemy's country. Then carry out the 5 techniques to break apart the enemy line, or the 5 strategies, which in Kusunoki tradition, 5 strategies is a very specific thing. So the 5 strategies to break apart the enemy line. It's basically 5 types of conspiracies, 5 strategies. Like a bright and clear mirror illuminating all of the universe, when one's own mind is clear and lucid, then one will clearly perceive the mind of the enemy. Between the two armies is an infinite number of variations of orthodox and unorthodox methods, and an infinite number of changes between the two. However, ignorant leaders cannot fathom or make use of this reality. In ancient times, the excellent military leaders knew that if the soldiers were at ease, then there would be obedience. Increase one's power. They knew to increase one's own power in a way that takes power from others. If the enemy is peacefully content, you must do something to fatigue them. If the enemy is haughty and confident, do something to make him afraid. If the enemy is harmonized, give them a reason to be suspicious of each other. If they are intimate and close, cause them to be pulled apart. If the enemy plots, make sure to subvert and turn the plot upside down. Defeat the enemy in the east if they are prepared for conflict in the west. Defeat in the west if they're prepared for the east. Same with north and south. Set it up so that if the enemy advances, it is to your advantage. If they retreat, it's to your advantage. And you can do this when in your heart there is wisdom, virtue. When there is morality, this can be done. When compared to the enemy, you should be the virtuous one. If one truly follows these methods, they will not suffer, even when they find themselves in dead ground. They will not anguish, even if they find themselves on yin ground. Soldiers do not have an innate form. There is no such thing as a usual form for a soldier. Soldiers change and adapt in accordance with the enemy. One should not make a fuss over the unusual and strange forms and the unusual and strange transitions and changes. These plots should be kept extremely secret, and the enemy should never know the location of upcoming attacks. Thus, the enemy will become afraid, and the enemy will have doubt and hesitation. They will have placed many people to defend certain locations, or they will assign forces to certain locations. But because of this allocation of people to defend certain places more than other places, some locations will become defended weakly. Thus, through an excellent plot and clever strategy, divide the enemy into smaller groups and attack the neglected spaces. Thus, there ends up being far fewer enemy soldiers to fight in those engagements in the neglected spaces. And those battles are safer and easier to win. It is the way of heaven and it is the way of earth that a large force defeats a small force. Thus, one has to defeat one segment of the enemy, and the rest of the force begins to become incomplete. Keeping movement in time, continue to hit the splintering pieces, slowly weakening the enemy by multiplying my power by multiplying his weakness. And then I will confess there is a quote here that I am not going to give because this quote here is almost like a uh, it's like a trend. How do I say? It's almost like a. It's very poetic here, and I'm not going to include it in this audio because I don't want it. I don't want this particular quote revealed yet. So selfishly, I'm keeping this sort of. This verse ends with a really nice sort of poetic ending here, but I'm keeping that secret for now. But the idea that Kusunoki is discussing here is the idea of luring out pieces of a larger force and sort of snipping them off, slowly diminishing. So 500 soldiers, you know, historically speaking, you would have about 500 soldiers. And what you don't want to take on 10,000 enemies. What you want to do is if you have 500 soldiers, you want to take on 500 or less enemies at a time. Bring them out, take them out. Bring them out, take them out. You want to cause gaps and then attack the gaps. This is the critical aspect of the military techniques that I teach. Now comes the final part. Thus it is, however, it is said that many selfish and immoral people will continue to walk this world for a long time, and there is less and less wisdom and talent as time goes on. And it is difficult to accomplish things such, not just warrior techniques, but such things as literacy. It actually says literacy, just so you guys know. The ability to sort of like read and write and stuff like that. Thus, I will write down in great detail the ways of using this wondrous form of warfare. I hope, or it is my intention, hope is the wrong, it is my intention that warrior families who study it have successful service. Never share or teach it with those with corrupted minds. It's also important here when he's talking about warrior families who study it have successful service. In this case, he's really referring to his family, his sons, and the Southern Court retainers. It's not a generic thing of just like, I hope any warriors. No, if you look at the original text, the way things are written here, it's talking about like the warrior families of this country, but there's a double meaning of the kanji that kind of refers to the fact like the court loyal warriors. Anyway, but the point of the matter is I hope the warrior families who study it have successful service, never share or teach it to those with corrupted minds. So on one hand, he is just talking to warriors in general, like warrior families in the future who aren't corrupt can read this, study this. But there is a double implication that he's sort of like those will serve the actual correct emperor, and those with corrupt minds. Or you could almost argue that he might be referring to people supporting the Northern Court, but it's not clearly said that way. The way it's clearly said is, I hope the warrior families who studied these techniques will have successful service, but never share or teach it to those with corrupt minds. That's what it says flat out. But there's an implication in the text that it is talking about that it will help the Southern cause and it will not be go over to the Northern, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so that uh, that pretty much concludes it. What I'll do is I'm going to make another video where I go back over this. I won't read it again because you'll have listened to it in this video. Take notes, read it, take notes, etc. And then I'm going to make another video here shortly where I'm going to analyze the piss out of it. I'm going to give you guys a ridiculous amount of commentary to go along with it. And I'll cross-reference it with other things, etc., etc., etc. You guys should enjoy it, hopefully, because it's going to be a major Kusunoki analysis, but I'm going to even bring Fukushima Shinobi no Maki into it. So hopefully you guys enjoy this. And like I said, so if you didn't write things down, I would say play this again with a pen and paper, write those points down. I have just read to you and a translation. Obviously, I didn't read it in Japanese, but I gave you a pretty good preliminary English translation of the introduction to the war methods. Now, I do need to be honest and say that at this point, as you guys should know, I have told you guys that I do actually hold these teachings as being sacred and I actually care. Some of the teachings you can just read them, but I need to say this basically now. There are some teachings that at the beginning of the scroll, at the beginning of the text, there is basically what's called a sealed document. There are mantras that have to be recited, and there are things that have to be done. And if you don't do those, and if you don't know how to do them, you're not supposed to read the document. And so therefore, those documents, I'm sorry guys, I'll find a way to refer to the material, but sorry, I will gladly share any material that's not sealed by mantra, but anything that has a seal, that has a mantra, that has a warning in the text saying, hey, you have to do XYZ before you can study this, da 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 da. That stuff, I'm not sure I'm going to handle that yet because I genuinely don't believe that I should translate and share that with everybody because the text itself says don't do that. But for the parts that don't say that, I will make videos to discuss, etc. And then one day, of course, the unsealed stuff will come out in really good translation with like college level dissertation quality analysis compared. But that final product may never come out. It may come out. It may never come out. But I decided I'll go ahead and start sharing things through this YouTube audio, and this way you guys can have some idea of when I say Kusunoki traditions, you can have some idea of what it is I'm talking about. So I just gave you guys the introduction. So that's the first thing that you would read. That's the introduction to all of the teachings. So now you should have an idea of the view. So what that does is that provides you with the foundational view of the Kusunoki method. And then, as I said, in the future, I will make another video here shortly where we'll go back over that text and I'll give you more commentary and discuss the translation, giving you better details about it. But I'll also, like I said, I'm going to even bring the Fukushima manual up because you'll see how it even carries into the Fukushima text. But again, like I stated earlier, anything that is sealed with a warning or a mantra or a ritual or something like that, as of right now, I don't have this. I don't know how that's going to happen because I believe it. Like I believe it. So I'm not. I can't. I can't in good consciousness or conscious. I can't in good whatever the word is. I can't in good faith just give that out to any random stranger, right? So yeah. But again, like I said, stuff that's not sealed, yeah, we'll go over it. All right, questions and comments or any kind of questions or comments, feel free to put them below. You can contact me through Facebook, send me messages, or you can send me messages through the YouTube account, or you can post stuff into the comment section. But like I said, if you didn't take notes, go back, listen to this again, take notes, and then be ready for the next video, which is going to go back over this text, but in great analytical detail. And then it will also, like I said, bring in the Fukushima Shinobi no Maki to further show the examples of things that will come up. All right.